U.S. Bank sponsorship of Conversations with Al McFarlane. I do want to obviously take this opportunity to thank Al for your partnership over the years, to your team for entrusting us to be your partners in these conversations in community. So thank you. I also want to give a shout out to the team at Capri Theater, to Maya and the team. Thank you so much for having us. When I walked in, I just sort of shared with them how important it is that we have these conversations here, that we house these conversations rooted in community. And every time I walk in this building, the sense of history, and it truly is humbling. So thanks for having us always. Before I have Al bring up our special guest, which is Kristall Porter, who Al will introduce in just a moment, I wanted to start by acknowledging all of you and just thanking all of you for being here. Thanking you for taking the time to come and share in these conversations. I think for the bank, our why for doing this is really to do a couple of things. It's one, to make sure that we bring visibility to some of the great work that all of you in this room are doing, particularly here on the north side. This is not about U.S. Bank. It really is about how do we shine a light on the great work that's happening, use our power to convene, to make sure that you have space to see the work that's happening, to ask questions, and so that we can all collectively get better. Because of the dialogue, the more successful we can be with the projects to help move the community forward, the better it is for all of us. And, I do want to say we have a number of U.S. Bank leaders here today who I'm going to introduce in just a moment. But I also want to acknowledge, and I said this the first time at our first event, that we have a U.S. Bank branch just down the street here on West Broadway. And what's important in that, and the reason I bring that up, is because that branch has been there for 30 years. We're not new to the community, is what I'm trying to say. And we're not going anywhere. And I think that's a really important thing for all of us in this community, that it's important that we bring new partners on. It's important that we sort of embrace those who are sort of new and come into our community and want to help, and we welcome that. We need that. But it's also important to acknowledge those who have been there for 3 decades and who placed the very first ad in Insight News, which I let. That was U.S. Bank. Was his very first, and I'll let him tell the story because I'm not trying to pat her back. But it's an important sort of illustration of what it means to be present, and what it means to show up, and what that consistency, it matters, because it's not just about a transaction for us. It's about how important we understand the juxtaposition between business and community. Those two things can and should not coexist without each other. I want to acknowledge just a couple of our team who is in the room. I mentioned our West Broadway branch right down the street. Our branch manager who leads that branch is here, Ravi Singh. Ravi's in the back of the room. Please raise your hand. Y'all can clap for Ravi. I mean, Ravi's we got it. He's also a board member of the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition, so Ravi is intricately involved. 2 other really important members of our team are here. Latea Allsites, who leads our community affairs for the bank in the Twin Cities. She's here. I saw Nancy Alvarado Hazelton, who is our business access advisor. Who was connecting small businesses to community. Have you ever had that feeling where, I don't even have a clue on how to engage a bank? If I have any entrepreneurs in the room who understand what I'm talking about, where do you even start with a bank? Because most of the times what you don't need is a bank, you actually need a banker. And there's a difference. And so Nancy's job is to really close that gap and make sure that you have an on-ramp to the bank, and that you actually have a banker, not just a bank. And then I also wanted to introduce Ashante Brown. Where are you? I know she's here somewhere. Operation Hope, um, also located in our West Broadway branch. Our partnership with Operation Hope is a national partnership. We brought it here to the Twin Cities, and the work that she's doing, not only here in North, but also on the South Side, to help individuals and families, businesses, build their credit scores, understand savings plans. The work that Operation Hope is doing is incredible. And there is nothing that will change your life. And I'm sure you'll understand when I say this. Nothing will change your life more than improving your credit score by 100 points. Like, it matters. And the work that Operation Hope and Ashanti are doing is so vitally important. So I'm going to be quiet because this is about Al and Kristall, but I just wanted to welcome you on behalf of US Bank. We believe these conversations are incredibly important, again, because when communities thrive, then businesses can thrive, and vice versa. When businesses are thriving, then we can invest more in community. And so there's some mutual benefit to everything that we do. We are committed to the North Side. We're going to remain committed to the North Side. And we just appreciate you being here and look forward to the conversation. So Al, I'll turn it over to you.
Greg, thank you. Thank you so much, Greg. Kristall, come on up. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Al McFarlane, and welcome to The Conversation with Al McFarlane, presented here live at the Paradise Room at Capri Theater. Capri Theater, one of the sacred civic spaces of this community, one of the most storied corridors in Minneapolis. So it's an honor to be back in this room with you. This is not a small thing. Look around. The people who show up here to a gathering like this on a Wednesday afternoon are people who mean it. You are the community. You are the work. So this platform has roots. We began these conversations at Lucille's Kitchen, some of you remember, with the Insight KMOJ Public Policy Forum. And the names have evolved, but the address has shifted, but the purpose has never moved. The purpose is to elevate engagement, to foster understanding, and to do the hard, honest, necessary work of confronting the intersectional challenges before us, from Black Lives Matter and social justice to the stubborn disparities in health and education, in home ownership, and in the accumulation of wealth across generations. So today we go deep into the economic life of this community. West Broadway is not just a street, it is a statement. It is a corridor that has survived disinvestment, displacement, and the slow erasure of Black commercial life in this city. And it is a corridor that continues to fight back because of people like our guest today, Kristall Porter. So Kristall Porter is Executive Director of the West Broadway Business and Area Coalition. Her leadership is grounded, strategic, and community-centered. I've been watching this work closely. Today you'll hear for yourself what it means to build Black business infrastructure, not as aspiration, but as action. That's what this is about. Before we begin, I want to extend my deepest gratitude to our extraordinary sponsors and partners whose continued commitment makes this platform not just possible, but sustainable. So a special word of appreciation goes to the Ray McKenzie Group, Sharon, Patrick, Kimberly, Brittany, for your flawless production partnership and for your belief in what we're building here. And to Brother DeVar McGee of Big Bar Productions doing the videography. Obviously, we want to thank Greg and all the team, all the partners at US Bank for their presence and their commitment. Greg mentioned that when we started Insight in 1974, that our very first customer was US Bank. It was called First Plymouth Bank then. I'm going to take a minute just to take us back, because what this represents and what I represent, what Insight News and McFarlane Media represent, is historical memory. Historical memory. Too often, who we are, where we've come from, where we've been, what we dream about, what we think about, is erased, forgotten. And we're left to start it again and again and again, never making progress. But the mission now is to be intentional and to document every thought, every idea, every move, every mistake, every victory. Documentation, record, 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 share, 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 invent, invent, event, invent, create, create, and show ourselves to ourselves and the world as a people who are entrepreneurial, who are capable, and who are willing to do the hard work to build a future in which we win. What do you mean win, Al McFarlane? Does that mean there's an adversary, there's an enemy? No, it doesn't. Winning means we have the right to redefine even what winning means. Winning can be a construct that means there are no losers. Everybody can win. And I believe our mission as a people, as a community, is to not create the fear and mistrust that make people feel that if we win, they're going to lose. No, it's not that. We're operating with a paradigm that says all of us can be better if we allow ourselves to be ourselves. So I want to take just another minute to talk about John Warder. This is historical memory. Does anybody here in the room know who John Warder was and is? John Warder was the president and founder, the creator of First Plymouth Bank. That was the U.S. Bank's investment into North Minneapolis on Plymouth Avenue. That bank was the first advertiser in Inside News. John Warder, when I went to him, I was a printing salesman at a magazine publishing company in Northeast Minneapolis, and I asked my boss to let me start a newspaper or a publication, a magazine for my neighborhood. I lived then where I live now on Thomas Avenue in North Minneapolis. This is my neighborhood. My children grew up here. They live here. I belong to this community, and I believe this community belongs to me. I asked him to let me start a magazine. He said, well, is the money out there? I'm sure it is. Is the interest there? I'm sure it is. Is the need there? Of course it is, because our community is barraged by disinformation and misinformation. Somebody has to tell the truth about who we are and what we want to be. And I decided that was my job, my mission, my calling. And I went to John Warder. He said, look, I'll support you. And that's why I'm always proud to say, Greg, that U.S. Bank was the first advertiser in Inside News. I thank you, Greg. I thank the U.S. Bank team and give them a round of applause. But they're still doing the work. It's important work. Well, so look, let me begin. So this is unscripted. I have some questions that you just now saw a second ago. But the questions don't really matter. The conversation does. This is about us connecting, and we always do. And in fact, one of our pre-meetings, we talked about our relationship, our chemistry. It's great chemistry. Yes. So I'm glad to be with you, Kristall. Yes. Let me start like I always do, just to ask you to take the 30 seconds to say who Kristall Porter is. Who are you, and why are you here?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a mother. I live on Thomas Avenue as well, and grew up in North Minneapolis. I'm a coach. I coach gymnastics as well for North, Camden, and Edison high schools. I've been doing that for 8 years. And I'm just really, really in love with my community. I didn't have the easiest upbringing. I left home when I was 14 years old. Been on my own since then. Been a mother since I was 14 as well. I'm a grandmother. A lot of my story, you would assume that I would not be in the position I am now. But I've always been somebody who's been someone that just didn't accept no. When I was told that I could not do something, I was like, oh, okay, so I can. And I always found a way through any obstacles that were put in my way. And mainly because I believe that my children deserve better than what I had, and my grandchildren do as well, and the children that I have raised in the community deserve better, and they need an example of someone that is going through the same thing that they are going through currently, showing them that they can overcome those things and those obstacles and become someone that can make an impact on their community and provide opportunities.
I'm going to come back and ask you a question that I ask many of my guests, and that is, who's your mama, who's your daddy? And the question is, whose shoulders do you stand on? Think about the legacy you represent, because I believe that we have to view these moments, each moment, as the gateway from the beginning to beyond the end.
Yeah.
This is the pathway to eternity. So each moment, each breath, each second is vital.
Yeah.
And so that means we have to really be aware of all those people, all the energies, all the stories, all the struggle that poured into this moment. I'm going to ask you about that.
Well,
and if not yet,
oh, okay.
and if you think about it. But what I want to do is ask you to now talk about West Broadway.
Yeah.
And in opening that door, I want to make a statement that when we started Insight magazine in 1974, I think the very second or third cover was the directors, the leaders of the West Broadway Business Association. And I say that to affirm this historic relationship.
Yeah.
The question of West Broadway as a vital economic engine for the city has always been there. And you are carrying that mission forward. The players have changed, but the issues are the same. So talk about the West Broadway Business Area Coalition mission, vision, history as you tell it, and where we are right now.
So our mission and our vision is basically to maintain the health and wealth of the avenue. That is, really, and then to draw people to the avenue so that our businesses are supported. And a lot of that is, being the placemakers. We provide space and place. When you think about like Open Streets West Broadway, Black Business Week, Black Friday on Broadway, and now this year the Blues and Jazz Festival that we'll be doing, it's to bring people to the community that typically use it as a pass-through, and let them meet the people that are living here and operating businesses here and working here and seeing that everything that they saw on media is not true. Media tends to thrive off of negativity, and that's what people are more drawn to. And so having an opportunity to come to North Minneapolis and see that everything that you've been told is a lie, and actually this is a beautiful space filled with family, good energy, and a lot of people that just want the same things that everyone else wants, access to goods and resources that they demand. And yeah, that's really what we do. We provide business technical assistance for the businesses that are currently in North Minneapolis. Right now we serve a little over 300 businesses that are looking for a brick and mortar and a space on the avenue. They've gone through Neon's programs. They have been able to, get the licenses and permits and get everything together, and Neon helped them get through that. But now it's time for us to find them a space. And a lot of that is very, very difficult when you're coming up against a lot of the things that have been holding West Broadway back for a long time. And so in order to be able to do this work, you need to be someone that's coming from the community. A lot of my staff and board members live in North Minneapolis. And if they didn't, they grew up in North Minneapolis. And that is a unique set of skills that you need to have, because you need to believe. You need to believe in a space that everyone else does not believe in. And in order to be able to believe in West Broadway, you need to have lived here and know the people that are here and believe in them. Yeah.
Describe the change in this community. I mentioned that when we started Insight in 1974 as a magazine, I had a picture of the directors of the West Broadway Business Association, WBBA. In fact, we had a column by Gene Elston. Gene Elston was called the Bard of West Broadway. Yeah. A nice old white-haired white guy, right? Yeah. Who was a booster, promoter, always a smile, always the civic guy that you could count on saying something good about the future of our community, being an advocate. That role of advocacy hasn't changed. Yeah. But the community has changed. I remember that photograph had one black person on it. That was Hank Gray. Hank Gray owned the Standard gas station on the corner of Broadway and Penn, where the Burger King was, and where I think now is the liquor store and housing complex. That's what's changed. That's memory again. And so talk about the change in the community, the change in the composition of the business sector,
Yeah.
and what it means and what it sort of foretells for the future of our community.
Yeah, well, you guys remember when Plymouth Avenue burned, right? And during that time, most of the shop owners on Plymouth Avenue were Jewish owned. And so that brings us to West Broadway, right? So there was a time where West Broadway's businesses were primarily owned by the Jewish and white community. I know when my parents first moved from Chicago to North Minneapolis, before I was born, you didn't see many Black people living north of Broadway, and you definitely didn't see them living north of Lowry. And so because of that, the goods and services that were provided did not reflect the people that lived there, did not reflect the people that lived here now. So those things had to change. West Broadway, right now, I would say about over 80% of the businesses on West Broadway are Black owned right now. It is definitely a mixture of businesses that are owned by people of color, and it reflects the people that are living around it. And, it's one of the things I always say. It's like, if a lot of the businesses on Broadway had to relocate or move, they probably would not survive, because they have a unique demand here in the community. And it is, it's what the people want here. And so that's the change. The change is, now we have a different leadership, and therefore we need to have people reflect that leadership. I'm very happy with the representation on the WBC board right now and with the staff. I had a lot of influence on the staff, so and I've had quite a bit of influence on the board right now, and I'm very, very proud of the people that are representing this business, because their hearts are into it. They are dedicated. I spend way more time on the phone with this board than I've ever in my ED career. They call me, text me all hours of the day and night, because they are concerned and they really, really care about the work that I'm doing, and they believe in the work that we're doing. So, yeah.
So, this neighborhood has been called, I say West Broadway has been called a corridor of resilience, but it's been also called a corridor of loss. And so when you look at the stretch of North Minneapolis today, what do you see personally that the data reflects, and what do you see that the data may not reflect? Describe this community, if you would, and then what's behind that is not as apparent.
So you hear the data and you hear, oh, well, we don't have this and we don't have that, and the disparities of this and the disparities of that. And, the reality is, there's so much coming up against you if you want to open a business on West Broadway. It's not like there's turnkey, move-in ready retail spaces. Okay, so in order to be able to open a business on West Broadway, you need to have a lot of money. Okay, you're moving into a building that's crumbling, it's falling apart, it's dilapidated, it's been ignored for a very long time, and you need to have that money to be able to build it out, to fix it. A lot of retail businesses that are renting a space, they usually just paint some walls and put up shelves. I don't know too many retail businesses that want and can open a business in North Minneapolis that has the ability to build a foundation and fix a roof. And that is the reality. And we've got a long history of property ownership along West Broadway Avenue, not just West Broadway Avenue, all throughout our corridors in North Minneapolis, of people who own land and just don't come here. They own it and they don't check up on it, and just allow things to just kind of deteriorate and fall apart, because they don't care, because they don't live here, and it's not their concern. I don't know exactly what are all the reasons for it and why. I personally can never understand owning a building and being able to afford to pay fines every year and just ignore and not bring in money to maintain it. But some people have a different kind of wealth, and that's what we're up against, is a different kind of wealth. And a lot of people that want to open a business in North Minneapolis, they're somebody that's from North Minneapolis. They have a dream. They have an idea. They have a thing that they've been doing for a long time, whether they're selling their goods online or providing a service door to door, or they just don't have the capital to go into one of these spaces and fix it up. And they don't have a family member that can give them a loan, something they can start with and walk into a bank and say, hey, I got this much. And just being able to get a loan, like you said in the beginning, credit is everything, right? Well, if you started off as a child with bad credit, then you're starting, way behind everyone else. And so that's what we're dealing with. The majority of the businesses on West Broadway, believe it or not, started their business with a credit card or a tax return. Okay. So that is the honest to God truth. And, the cost of doing business on Broadway is difficult. If you're someone that got it all together when it comes to your community, right? So people may think that I got it all together. I don't, but if you're somebody that it seems like you got it all together and you still cannot get your building insured for 2 years because no one will insure your building, what do you do? And if there's civil unrest that happens in that time frame and your building gets tore apart and the media says, oh, well, they didn't have insurance, that's why they couldn't rebuild. And then you have that shame. It's not your fault. Insurance companies, they decide whether they're going to insure you or how much they're going to charge you for insurance based on data points. So how many 911 calls were made on or around that property? And they don't go back a few years. They go back for forever. So we've got business owners along West Broadway that have told me that they haven't had to pick up the phone and call 911 for the last 3 or 4 years. But they're still paying more insurance for a teeny tiny business than an Aldi's on Lyndale Avenue South. So I don't know too many people that want to open a business on Broadway that can afford that much insurance. And any large corporations, people go, well, why don't we have a Starbucks or any of those larger businesses? They look at the bottom line. They look at every little penny. And if those numbers look bigger than any of their other locations, they're not coming unless they're able to make up for it in what their sales will be. And so when you saw Walgreens on Broadway and when you saw Aldi's on Lowry and Penn, they knew that they had a unique situation, that they were going to get a return on their investment despite the expensive cost to doing business in North Minneapolis. When you're the only other pharmacy in North Minneapolis than one other pharmacy, you're going to make that money back. When you know the AMI is at a certain level, area median income is a certain level, that everyone's going to shop at Aldi's, right? Especially when at the time they opened, the only other grocery store that they had competition with was Cub Foods. And once again, Cub Foods, right? And so they made that risk. They took that risk. And if you guys, I don't know how close you guys pay attention to certain things, but our Aldi's in North Minneapolis before it closed was the only Aldi's that did not receive a major renovation out of all the other Aldi's across the entire state. So, and there was a reason for that, the cost of doing business. And so that's what we're up against. We're up against that. There's certain things that need to happen in legislation. I talked to different folks about this on the legislature, and I was like, is this something we need to change on the state level, the federal level? What is it? How long back could insurance companies go back? Should we create our own insurance? Should the state insurance, but either way, these are the issues that we're coming up against. And
So you and the West Broadway Area Coalition is working at the intersection of business development, of community organizing, and policy advocacy. It's a wide lane. And so how do you keep those three things from pulling against each other? And where and how can they pull in the same direction? So, business development, Kenya McKnight.
yeah,
Kenya McKnight. Community organizing and public service. I'm looking at Sandra as a community organizer and a visionary,
yeah.
and policy. How do we marry all those energies, all those needs, all those interests, so that we are victorious? What do you think?
Partnerships. We can't all do everything, right? I thought I could do everything when I was younger, 2 years younger than now. But the more you partner, the better you'll be. There's so many people that are doing such amazing things. I'm just looking at the room right now and all the work that gets done just from the hands that are in front of me right now. And, I think the most important thing is to not pretend like you can do something that you read an article about, and to lean into the folks that are in your circle, or, that know people within your circle that are experts at that thing or doing that work. We're going to get burnt out. We're all going to get burnt out if we don't lean on each other. I've always been somebody that has had a hard time understanding why people were being so competitive. Growing up, I'm like, why? Like jealousy. It's, yes, we're all victims of it, but it's silly. It's a waste of time. And it's why we have not moved forward as a community. And I'm not saying people aren't using each other's talents because of jealousy. What I'm saying is we get so caught up in the work that we're doing, we forget to look up and see that there's people around us with talents and that want to help and have energy to help. And so I just think that when we figure that one out, when we figure out how to sew all the little pieces of that quilt together, we're gonna be a mighty force. And so, I don't have time to read all the policy that's being brought up to the legislature this year. I don't have time to read what's on the city council agenda every month. And neither does my staff. I don't have time to build buildings down the avenue, but I know people that know how to do it. And I know people that know how to get those funds together to do it. And I think that that's what we need to be focusing on, is making sure that we're picking up the phone and calling each other and working with each other. Because, burnout is real. I'm looking at a lot of CEOs and executive directors in this room. I know you're tired. I'm tired. But call me, and I promise to call you, because that's how we're going to get this stuff done.
Let me pivot a little bit and ask you to sort of reveal and reflect the concerns of ordinary people in an extra inordinary time. Last night, we were all watching to see if the world would end, if our president would attempt to destroy a civilization that had existed 1,000 years, thousands of years. That was a threat. But more than the threat, it's a reflection of a mindset. What's the impact of that mindset on ordinary people, neighbors, friends, parents, businesses in our community? What kind of destabilizing impact is that uncertainty creating in community? That's number one. Number two, I used the word in the opening, a comment about erasure. And I think that the policy of what I call the supremacist, nationalist camp, right wing, would like to have us all go away.
Oh, for sure.
But we're not going away, and we're not going to go away. And there's another narrative beneath that that believes that we are afraid, that we're scared, and that is propaganda. It's not true. It never has been true. We've been resistant, resilient. We've been fighting from the moment we set foot on the shore and continue to fight. And our fight is one that tends to humanize the entire apparatus. We, I believe, are the foundation for the meaning of the potential of democracy and freedom. We believed it even when they said it and didn't act like it, particularly when it came to us. So how are people feeling as you talk and navigate, the daily payroll questions, the daily tax questions, the daily supply tariffs, the daily reporting questions? What's the feeling among the businesses in our community? And what kind of support, advice can you give them, or can we give each other to encourage each other to stay the course and to believe in both our resilience and our potential and our victory? What do you think?
Well, this guy that's running our country now has made quite a few attempts to destroy businesses, especially ones that are reflective of this room. It's trying to, basically dismantling MBDA, CDFI funds, DEI across, federal agencies. We're seeing now, and a lot of the businesses that I work with are, they're seeing it. Hundreds of thousands of businesses that were owned by people of color across the country that have had to close their doors and are closing their doors right now because those were things that were designed solely to offer support for the businesses that we serve. The reality is, yes, these things are happening. And basically we've gotten real scrappy. We're kind of rolling with the punches, and every single person that comes to us, we just kind of work with them one at a time. A lot of them are, they're so caught up in the struggles that they're dealing with uniquely to them that they don't have time to read the news, or track what's happening. All they know is this thing is happening to them. It's getting worse, and they don't know why. And they just need support. And so what we've been doing is just trying to find every single avenue that we can. Fortunately, I had a background in neighborhood, organizations. So understanding the funds that come through from the city and the state that way. And then environmental background, which just recently, before I came into this position, there was billions of dollars on the table available to that work, and it's still there, fortunately. And so just getting very unique on how we approach some of the issues that these businesses are dealing with, but also having to change it up a little bit, right? I used to be able to have like an 85 to 90% return rate on grants I wrote. Now we're at like a 20%, and that's just because it's not like my writing got worse, or maybe it did, I don't know, but it's because we have had so many things happen in such a short time that have caused foundations, philanthropy organizations to change their focus because they have to make up for the lost.
Let's sit with that for a minute. So it's an important question. The question of I have a story in, I think, last week's Insight that talks about the new way to discriminate is not the overt racism that we were used to in the past, but now it's legal language.
Yeah.
It's language now. It's not a hood on the street, not driving into Tulsa, Black Wall Street, or Rosewood, and burning up somebody's house because they own a piano and you don't, but your jealousy and your insanity makes you not want to see them prosper, to see their prosperity as antithetical to your own existence, right? And your sense of entitlement, that challenge. And so these days, the overt isn't there except for when you look at ICE, right? That's a throwback to the old posse, the slave patrols. But beyond that, the chilling atmosphere that we're in now is causing the legislature, the governor, right, the philanthropy community, perhaps some of the banks, not all of them, to take more time. Like you said, it's not your writing that's changed. You've only improved. But the barriers have been shrank or grown larger, and the room you have to operate in is being made narrower and narrower. And that comes to the question of displacement. I used that word earlier in the opening remarks. One of the things we always talked about was displacement. The companion word was regentrification. The removal of our community, of our people, of our businesses, of our capacity to be economically viable. So how do we resist that? One more comment, you can just flow on this if you would. I think, and I think about this a lot, that what's required right now is that we spend as much energy and time as we can preparing for what's going to happen in the reopening of the world in about 2 years. The world is going to begin to reopen in November at the midterm elections, when we've created some bulwarks to begin to undo the atrocity of our current national leadership. But we can't just wait and watch for that. We need to use this time right now to double down, work twice as hard, organize, plan, and as you said, collaborate, work with intention. So what do you think? How do we use this time, and where do you see us going? How do we avoid what we've seen as displacement? We saw it with the I-94 and the I-35, the destruction of Rondo, the 8th Street in North Minneapolis. We know what can happen. It's happened before. And with knowledge, what are we arming ourselves to do to both protect and to grow into a future where we declare that we have won? What do you think?
Well, the indigenous side of me would push against this. But in this country, the quickest way to wealth is land ownership. Right now, we're in a position where the average property tax increase since 2023 in Minneapolis went up 8%. In North Minneapolis since 2023, it went up 19%. That's only going to increase even more with the potential light rail going down West Broadway. If we think that our mortgages and the rents are too high to be able to afford now, it's definitely going to go up more. I'm not saying this to push you away from buying property in North Minneapolis. What I'm saying is partnerships are very, very important right now. We cannot remain siloed as a community. We cannot do it all on our own. All right. The story of the white picket fence and pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps is long gone. If you want to buy property and put your business in there, think about getting a few other businesses that you can buy that property with. So all your eggs are not in one basket. You guys are doing it together. So when one needs a break, they can take that break while the others keep that business going or that building operating. If you can't afford to buy a house right now, that's okay. You got friends that want to buy a house too. Buy a house together. The reality is, if we do not start doing this now, we will be removed from North Minneapolis in a very short time. What we see as the culture of North Minneapolis now will cease to exist in the next 10 to 15 years. We can make all the plans we want of a beautiful, prosperous North Side, but all of our neighbors that we see now are not going to be here if we don't step up and start purchasing the land around us. The changes are going to happen. The development's going to happen. Road construction is going to happen. But who's going to benefit on the other end? Will it be the developers, the engineers, the property maintenance companies? Or will it be the people that are living here now? And we can make sure it's the people that are living here now, but we as leaders in this room right now have got to start working together to start making those things happen, and also guiding people who have the ability to purchase land through that process. So that's my answer to that.
Well, let me state the question differently. It's the same question. You've answered it, but answer it again if you would. Displacement is kind of the shadow that falls over every development conversation in North Minneapolis. And so say it if you would, who is the corridor being built for? And how does the West Broadway Area Coalition hold that question in its work? You've already said the answer, but let me let you say it again, because I think it's important to keep saying it again and again.
I would say the people that have plans right now, that have come out with the plans, are building it for the North Side right now. With North Side Forward, that was a collaboration of a lot of North Siders in the room. I was in that room. The plans that we have as WBC, what Neon's building, we're building it for North Side. We are. At the end of the day, we can't control the rising property values. We just can't. And the more we develop and the more we build, it's going to keep rising, and we need to, as people who are in leadership, we need to make sure that the people around us are equipped to be able to handle that change. Yes, we're building North Side for North Siders by North Siders, but at the end of the day, the property values are going to increase. My daughter, who is 28 years old, it took her 9 months to find a studio apartment under $1,400 on the North Side. Okay, so that's a reality. And so the only way we're going to make sure that displacement doesn't happen is if we make sure that the properties that we're purchasing and the developments that we are planning are thinking about the people who are here now. Because if we don't take care of the people who are here now, how are we to expect that we are going to see each other here anymore in 10, 15 years from now? It's just, it is what it is. And at the end of the day, I fully believe in taking care of the ones that are here now. You got a lot of people that say things like, oh, well, what businesses are actually on Broadway? And poo-poo, But I say, screw that. They survived through so many generations of disinvestment and being just spat on by media for how many years? And then after that, George Floyd, COVID, and all of these different programs that have been stripped from them. And North Minneapolis only gets $50,000 every 2 years of Great Street's facade funding for the entire North Side. Come on. If they can survive not having access like that, I don't care what I don't care what they're serving out of their doors. They are amazing. And we need to take care of them for being there to take care of us.
Great point. I started off, we're going to have questions in a couple of minutes. If you have questions or comments, I'm going to ask you to come to the microphone over where Sharon is. But before we go into that, I want to go back to something I promised you to ask at the beginning, and that is, who are your people? Who are your people? And we do this with each other all the time.
Yeah.
Right? We identify and we establish credentials.
Yeah.
So whose shoulders are you standing on? And you made reference to your indigenous side.
Yeah.
I see you as an African woman.
Yeah.
But you're that and more.
Yeah.
Who's your mama? Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Who's your people? and who are you bringing into the future? I got one last question after that, but go ahead.
Okay. So my mom and dad actually met in Chicago at the University of Chicago. My mom is Cherokee and German, and my dad is Choctaw and Black. Um, yeah, they moved to North Minneapolis in the late 60s. Moved over on 4th Street. They actually, my mom tells me stories of when 94 was put in right in our front yard. I don't remember it because I was way too young to remember that, but she saw the neighborhood get tore down and it was literally in our front yard. And my dad drove bus. It was MTC at the time. Whenever I was in trouble, I had to ride the bus all day with him and sit right up front. I have 6 siblings. My parents had 7 kids together. And, you know, we're just a, you know, family that had all kinds of issues. But one thing I would say is my parents were, even though it was a situation that made me leave at a very young age, they did instill a lot of amazing things in me. I would say by the time I was in kindergarten, I knew how to balance a checkbook. I knew how to calculate the price per ounce because we were very poor in a grocery store. And I knew how to grow a garden and can and do everything, be completely self-sufficient by the time I entered grade school. So there was a lot of things I learned from my parents.
Who are the ancestors in your life today?
The ancestors in my life today, my neighbors.
Okay, okay. All right.
I got keys to their home. They got keys to mine. I take care of them. You know, I make sure all the seniors on my block have access to the eggs in my yard for my chickens because eggs are expensive. And I help them. I check on them on a regular basis. And then in return, they fill me with knowledge. There isn't a night that does not go by where I don't talk to an elder and they read me their poetry or tell me the discussion they had in their meeting or book club over at Lund's in Golden Valley. But yeah, it's my neighbors.
So Kristall Porter, shift with me, go with me with this. Today, now, is what, April 7th? It's April.
I think so.
April
No,
7th?
it's the 8th.
April 8th?
It's the 8th.
But
yeah.
the year is 2126. This is April 8th. Go with me. And it's 2126. And we won.
Yeah.
We won. We know we won. The world knows we won. What's it like? What do you see outside your door? Tell me about it.
Well, you know, I get up in the morning, I go grab my reusable shopping bag, and I walk a block away from my house, and I have everything that I need and want at my disposal. I can walk just within a 1-block radius and fill that bag with all the things I want and need. I can meet with my friends at a cafe that's owned by someone I know, and we'll walk back with my bag full and my heart full because I got to run into all the people that I grew up with and known my whole life are still here. That's what I see. Yeah.
That's a beautiful sight. Give it a round of applause. It's wonderful. So if you have a question, come up. Before I take the first question here, let me just say, you know, kind of in the way of closing remarks and leading to the Q&A part, you know, we spent the last hour in the presence of someone who's doing the work and not just talking about the work, but doing it. So I want to thank you, Kristall Porter, sincerely, deeply, for sharing clarity, analysis, and commitment with this room today. You've given us something to carry forward. And to the community, your presence today is not incidental. You are the through line. You are the reason this platform exists and the reason it continues every time you show up to listen, to question, to push back, to imagine you are investing in something larger than yourselves. That is not rhetoric. That is the record. We talk often about narrative sovereignty, about who tells our story and how. And today we did that work together. We looked at West Broadway not as a problem to be solved, but as a power center to be realized. So hold that frame, apply it. The narrative you carry out of this room matters. So deep appreciation goes out to all of our sponsors and partners, those who sustain not just this event, but the long arc of our work, including what we do at Insight News and the conversation with Al McFarlane and